Have you ever wondered if it's possible to live a fulfilling life without maintaining a huge circle of friends after 70? If you felt that tug of social obligations or the weight of constantly trying to keep up with people who no longer bring joy into your life, then this video is for you. You may be surprised to learn that letting go of unnecessary friendships could lead to a happier, more peaceful, and more self-empowered life. In this video, we're diving into 6 powerful reasons why you don't need to maintain friendships in your later years, and how doing so can drastically improve your well-being. From the liberation of no longer seeking validation from others to discovering how valuable your time truly is, we'll explore how embracing independence can help you feel freer and more at peace than ever before. Stay with us till the end, and we'll also show you how choosing peace over pressure, quality over quantity, and genuine connections over obligations can help you reclaim your life. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by social expectations or questioned whether your friendships are truly serving you, this video might just shift your perspective. By the end, you'll discover how embracing solitude, letting go of the friendships that drain you, and prioritizing your happiness could bring you greater fulfillment than you ever imagined. So, stick around. Your journey to more freedom and peace begins now. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Number 1. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. As we reach the later stages of life, one of the most profound realizations we come to is that we no longer need to prove ourselves to anyone. For so long, society and the pressures of life seem to demand our constant validation. But once you cross that threshold, when you hit 70 and beyond, there's a certain freedom that comes with it. A freedom you never fully understood when you were younger, because back then, everything revolved around seeking approval. Think back to your younger days, when friendships often felt like a never-ending game of comparison, competition, and performance. How often did you find yourself fitting in just to feel validated? Whether it was impressing your colleagues, maintaining your place in a social circle, or ensuring you were always invited to the right gatherings, there was a constant, sometimes silent, pressure to be seen and accepted. It was exhausting. Every conversation seemed to be an opportunity to prove your worth, whether by showcasing accomplishments or trying to make others feel like they were lucky to be in your presence. Now, though, things have changed. You've lived through those phases, learned from them, and come out stronger. At this stage, your sense of fulfillment isn't dependent on external applause or recognition. It is rooted deep within you. As the years pass, you come to realize that genuine happiness comes from within, not from seeking approval, but from embracing who you truly are. You don't need to chase after friendships just to boost your reputation or to keep up with social standings. You've already built your legacy, and what people think of you no longer defines you. That was the old you, the one who spent sleepless nights worrying about what others thought. But now, you've reached a point where your worth is defined by your own heart, not by how many people cheer you on. It's liberating, isn't it? There's no need to constantly impress, no need to pretend, and no need to act out a role to meet the world's expectations. Think about someone like Harold. He's in his early 70s now and spent most of his life climbing that corporate ladder. For decades, Harold was surrounded by people. Colleagues, acquaintances, people he thought were friends. But looking back, most of those relationships were shallow. They were based on convenience, circumstance, and the unspoken need to maintain a certain image. As soon as Harold retired, those friendships started to fade away. At first, it was a blow to his ego. He felt like he had to put out the effort to keep those ties alive, to chase after relationships that were never really built on anything of real substance. But then, he had an epiphany. Why should he continue fighting for friendships that only existed because of work? Why should he pour his energy into relationships that, if he were being honest, had never held real meaning? So, Harold did something radical. He stopped forcing relationships out of habit. Instead, he turned his attention inward and began focusing on himself. He spent time revisiting old hobbies, rediscovering passions he had long forgotten. He invested in activities that truly brought him joy, not the ones that made him feel obligated. And the most significant change of all? Harold let go of the need to impress others. He finally allowed himself the gift of not caring what people thought of him. That was a freedom he hadn't realized he'd been missing. It was a revelation. Once Harold stopped chasing meaningless friendships, he felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The weight of maintaining false connections, the endless cycle of small talk, and the pressure of wondering if people liked him or not, all melted away. Harold found peace in simply being himself. No more pretending. No more keeping up with expectations. No more masks to wear. He was finally living for himself, and it felt incredible, like a heavy burden had been lifted. And this, dear reader, is where the magic happens. When you stop seeking external validation, when you let go of the need to prove anything to anyone, you suddenly see how much of your life was drained by trying to fit into molds that didn't serve you. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. The days of pretending, chasing after fleeting moments of approval, are over. The only opinion that truly matters now is your own. The only person you need to impress is yourself. And that is the most powerful realization of all. Number 2. Peace becomes more valuable than socializing. As you age, something within you shifts, and you begin to realize that peace becomes more precious than any form of social interaction. In the earlier chapters of your life, there was a certain urgency to be surrounded by people, to fill your time with events, phone calls, and constant chatter. It felt like an essential part of living well, to be constantly immersed in the noise of the world. You believed that being busy with others was a sign of success, of vitality. But with time, you come to understand that true value lies not in the hustle of social engagements, but in the quiet, the serene kind of quiet that fills your soul and allows you to finally breathe, to truly rest without the weight of obligation or the strain of maintaining relationships out of habit. Looking back, you realize that, while many friendships may have been fulfilling once, they eventually began to feel more like a responsibility than a joy. Sure, friendships are beautiful, and they should be cherished, but as the years go by, you start noticing the subtle shift. Phone calls become a checklist, texts pile up like never-ending chores, and every social invitation feels like a weight you don't need. What once was an exhilarating whirlwind of connection becomes a tiring routine, and suddenly, you start craving something different. Solitude. Not loneliness, mind you, but the kind of solitude that is sacred, the kind that allows you to listen to your thoughts without the distractions of everyone else's expectations. For many, this change in perspective might feel unsettling at first. But the reality is, as you get older, you realize that you no longer need to prove yourself by constantly engaging. You no longer have to prove your worth by being available to others at the drop of a hat. You've entered a season of your life where your time is yours, and you deserve to use it in the way that brings you the most peace, without guilt or second-guessing. The gift of time becomes precious, and you begin to see it for what it truly is, a treasure. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Take Margaret, for instance. At 74, she was once the life of every gathering, with a calendar filled to the brim with lunches, group calls, and holiday parties. Her social circle was vast, and she was always on the go, eager to keep up with everyone. But as the years passed, something began to change. The lunches felt more like obligations than celebrations, and the calls, though well-meaning, started to drain her rather than uplift her. She realized that most of the conversations were repetitive, filled with complaints, gossip, or trivial talk. What had once been the fabric of her social life now felt like a heavy cloak that she was forced to wear. The joy of companionship, once so vibrant, had faded into the mundane. One day, Margaret had enough. She decided to release herself from the chains of social expectation. She stopped feeling guilty for declining invites to gatherings that didn't bring her joy. She began to enjoy the luxury of not responding to every message the moment it arrived. She let go of the constant need to be available, and in doing so, she embraced a quieter, simpler life. She started to walk longer paths through nature, letting the rhythm of her footsteps match the calm of her thoughts. She finally picked up the books that had been gathering dust on her shelves for years. And through it all, she discovered the greatest revelation of all. Solitude wasn't something to fear, it was a peaceful refuge, a space for her soul to rest. This is the beauty of aging. This quiet, profound shift where you realize you no longer need to fill every moment with noise or activity to feel alive. You no longer need to seek constant validation from others, to measure your worth by how many people you're connected to. The value of your own company becomes enough. You discover the incomparable gift of choosing peace over pressure, calm over chaos. And when the guilt creeps in, when you feel the pull to conform to the expectations of others, remind yourself of the truth. You are not withdrawing from life. You are embracing a new kind of fulfillment, one that arises from within, from the serene space of your own heart. This is your time to rest, to recharge, and to embrace the beauty of peace without the need for anyone else's approval or involvement. Number 3. Fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. One of the most profound and often painful lessons life teaches us as we grow older is that not everyone who walks into our lives as a friend is genuinely invested in us. Over the years, we all experience it. The fading of connections, the slow drift of once close companions who, when the going gets tough, seem to disappear. The friends who we thought we could count on suddenly grow distant when we need them most. Or worse, the relationships we poured our hearts into turn out to be completely one-sided. By the time you reach 70, you begin to realize something that's both liberating and heartbreaking. Fewer friendships don't just mean fewer social commitments. They also mean fewer soul-crushing disappointments. Friendships, no matter how solid we believe them to be, come with their own set of expectations. We expect the phone calls, the check-ins, the gestures of support that make us feel seen and heard. But what happens when those expectations go unmet? The bitter taste of disappointment sets in. You call someone, and they don't return your call. You make the effort, but they don't even try to meet you halfway. You feel like you're pouring everything into a relationship, but when the time comes for them to reciprocate, they're nowhere to be found. At this stage in life, when you're so much more aware of your time and energy, do you need that kind of emotional burden? The answer is a resounding no. Take William, for example. At 78, he's seen it all. Friendships that once felt like the cornerstone of his life, now fading into the background. Some ended naturally, others slipped away quietly when he realized that he was always the one making the calls, always the one organizing the meetups, always the one trying to keep the connection alive. There were people he'd known for decades who suddenly became too busy, too distracted, too caught up in their own lives to show up for him when it mattered. At first, it stung more than he cared to admit. He wrestled with feelings of confusion and self-doubt. He asked himself, what did I do wrong? Why are these people fading out of my life? It felt like a personal rejection. But then, something beautiful happened. He had a revelation. He realized he hadn't changed. The only thing that had changed was his tolerance for relationships that no longer served him. He was no longer willing to settle for friends who weren't as invested in him as he was in them. That's the thing. When you let go of the illusion that you need a large circle of friends to be happy, you also free yourself from the endless cycle of disappointments. You no longer have to feel that sinking frustration when someone doesn't check in. You don't have to feel that sting when a friendship slowly fades into nothing. Instead, you begin to focus on what matters: your peace of mind, your emotional health, and ultimately your happiness. And this doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself or live in solitude. It simply means that you start to value quality over quantity. You stop worrying about maintaining a long list of casual acquaintances, and instead, you focus on the relationships that truly nourish you, the ones that don't require 1,000 efforts to sustain. Whether it's family, a lifelong friend who has been with you through thick and thin, or even just a deep and meaningful connection with yourself, these are the bonds that count. These are the ones that fill your soul, rather than drain it. So, if you've ever found yourself in a place where friendships have caused more stress than joy, permit yourself to step back. It's okay to say no to the drama, to the expectations, to the people who never truly understood the meaning of reciprocity. It's okay to choose simplicity over the clutter of superficial connections. It's okay to prioritize peace over the chaos of unmet needs. You don't need a lengthy list of friends to feel complete. All you need is the courage to let go of the ones who were never really there in the first place, and in doing so, you make room for those who truly matter. Number 4. Your time becomes more precious. As the years roll by and you grow older, a deep realization begins to settle in. Time is no longer something you take for granted. It becomes your most sacred and irreplaceable resource. When you were younger, it might have felt like time was abundant, like there was always more of it to go around. You had endless hours to spend with friends, to chase after new adventures, to engage in the whirlwind of social gatherings, and to obsess over the fleeting dynamics of who was in your life and who wasn't. The hours stretched out before you, and the urgency to seize each one wasn't as clear. But then, something shifts. When you hit the milestone of 70, everything changes. The clock ticks louder, and you realize, perhaps for the first time, that every single moment is precious. Each hour, each day is a gift you can never get back. The weight of that truth hits you hard, and it causes your entire perspective on life to change. Once you understand just how valuable your time truly is, your approach to it transforms. You become much more selective about how you spend it because you simply cannot afford to waste it on things or people that no longer serve your happiness. The relationships that once seemed so important, the friendships you maintained out of habit, suddenly come into sharp focus. You begin to see that not all of these connections are worth keeping. Yes, friendships are wonderful and bring joy, but they also demand your time, time that you may not have in abundance anymore. There's the need for calls, the obligation of visits, the constant juggling of plans, and the emotional energy spent trying to maintain relationships that feel like they're on life support. At this stage of life, it's not only okay to reevaluate these connections, it's necessary. You deserve to ask yourself hard questions. Does this friendship still add value to my life? Am I spending my precious time nurturing bonds that no longer bring me peace or joy? Or is it just a product of routine, a relationship you've kept out of a sense of obligation, because letting go feels too complicated or uncomfortable? In these final chapters of your life, the most important thing is to choose wisely. Take Richard, for example. In his early 80s, he used to have a bustling social life filled with dinners, outings, and endless phone calls with friends. But over time, he started feeling a shift. The conversations that once energized him now drained him. The social events that once sparked excitement had turned into tiresome obligations. One afternoon, as he sat at a table filled with small talk and constant complaints, something profound dawned on him. He didn't want to live this way anymore. It wasn't about being lonely, it was about being fulfilled. So, Richard made a bold change. He stopped saying yes just because it was expected. He started saying no when he didn't want to go out, and he stopped attending gatherings that no longer brought him joy. He realized he was allowed to make time for himself. Instead of pouring energy into gossip, he embraced activities that filled him with purpose and peace. Reading, walking, learning, and just sitting quietly in the comfort of his thoughts. And you know what? He didn't feel lonely. On the contrary, he felt more connected to himself than he ever had before. He was finally spending his time doing things that nourished his soul, not wasting it trying to meet everyone else's needs or expectations. And that's the incredible power of understanding the value of your time. It frees you to truly live for yourself. It's not selfish. It's self-care in its truest form. So, if you ever find yourself questioning whether certain friendships are worth continuing, Ask yourself, is this the best use of my time? Is this friendship enriching my life, or simply filling space in my calendar? Because at this stage in life, you don't owe anyone anything. You've spent decades investing in others, caring for them, and making room for them. Now, it's your turn. You've earned the right to choose how you spend your time. So, go ahead. Permit yourself to live for your happiness, at your own pace, on your terms. You deserve it. Number 5. True companionship comes from within. One of the most deeply ingrained misconceptions about growing older is the belief that to find true happiness, we must maintain a bustling social life surrounded by a large group of friends. We are often conditioned to think that companionship and connection come from others, that having a full calendar of social engagements is a marker of a life well lived. But here's the heartbreaking truth that many come to realize only in their later years. The most profound companionship you can ever have is the one you cultivate with yourself. By the time you reach the age of 70, you've weathered the storms of life, built a lifetime of experiences, and developed an intricate understanding of who you are. The years have offered you countless lessons, each one contributing to a clearer sense of self. You've learned what brings you peace, what makes you laugh, and what truly fills your heart. And with this wisdom comes a powerful and freeing revelation. You are enough, exactly as you are. For so long, society tells us to look outward for happiness. We are urged to find fulfillment in the presence of others, to chase the elusive sense of belonging by filling our lives with endless social engagements. Loneliness, we are warned, is something to be feared, avoided at all costs. But here's where the distinction needs to be made. There is a world of difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a state of physical solitude, but loneliness is a deep, emotional isolation that often arises from feeling disconnected from yourself. It's entirely possible, and utterly beautiful, to embrace solitude, not as a form of abandonment, but as an opportunity to rediscover who you are, to reflect on the life you've lived, and to experience peace within your own heart. I think of Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman whose journey resonates with so many. She once believed that her happiness depended on being surrounded by people. Her days were filled with phone calls, lunch dates, and social events, all in pursuit of connection. But, over time, something started to shift. Despite being socially active, she began to feel more and more drained. The laughter, the conversations, the constant activity, they were no longer fulfilling. She realized that many of her friendships had become shallow, based on obligation or routine rather than authentic connection. Worse, she began to notice how she was often adjusting herself to fit into the conversations, twisting her thoughts and feelings just to maintain a place in the group, to avoid the discomfort of being left out. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Then one day, in an act of quiet rebellion, Eleanor stopped. She made the brave decision to spend time with herself, truly and intentionally, in the same way she would have spent time with a cherished friend. She began to savor moments she used to rush through. Long walks in nature became her sanctuary, where she could simply breathe and listen to her thoughts without the pressure of making small talk. She started going to cafes with a book instead of chatting away with acquaintances, enjoying the comfort of her own company without guilt. Quiet evenings became a time for reflection, for appreciating the woman she had become, for feeling gratitude for the life she had lived. And do you know what happened? She felt lighter. She felt happier. She discovered peace in a way she hadn't known for years. This is the profound beauty that many fail to grasp. True companionship isn't measured by how many friends you have or how often you engage with others. It's about how deeply you know and accept yourself, how at peace you feel in your presence. When you no longer rely on others for your entertainment, your sense of worth, or your validation, you unlock an inner freedom that most will never experience. You become your source of joy, your well of wisdom, your fulfillment. And here's the sweetest part. When you learn to enjoy your own company, when you become content with being with yourself, the relationships that come into your life will be effortless and nourishing. Instead of desperately chasing after friends to fill the void, you'll find that the right people appear naturally. These are the people who respect your space, who understand your boundaries, who honor the life you've built and bring peace rather than pressure. These are the kind of relationships that don't drain you, but enrich you. So, if you've ever worried that stepping back from friendships might lead to loneliness, take a deep breath and remember this. The best company you will ever find is already with you. It's been with you all along. When you finally embrace that truth, you'll realize you were never truly alone in the first place. You simply needed to stop looking outside of yourself and begin nurturing the bond you share with your own heart. The beauty of companionship begins within you. Number 6. Letting go opens the door to a more fulfilling life. One of the most liberating and profound actions you can take after the age of 70 is simply to let go. Let go of the emotional burden of holding on to relationships that no longer bring joy or fulfillment. Let go of the damaging belief that your worth is somehow tied to the size of your social circle. Let go of the false notion that being alone automatically means you are lonely or lacking in any way. When you release these heavy expectations, you unlock the door to a life that is not just simpler, but richer, freer, and much more satisfying than you could have ever imagined. I cannot stress enough how many of us, especially as we grow older, continue to cling to friendships and social obligations simply out of habit or out of a misplaced sense of duty. We attend events we don't want to go to, pick up the phone for calls we feel obligated to answer, and put on smiles for gatherings that have long ceased to spark any joy in our hearts. We keep up appearances, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy because, well, it's what we've always done. But imagine, just imagine, what would happen if we allowed ourselves to be free from these self-imposed chains? What if we permitted ourselves to walk away from relationships that felt more like a chore than a source of joy? What if, instead of holding on to people who drain us, we began to prioritize what truly brings us happiness, peace, and contentment? Consider the story of James, a man in his late 70s, who spent years believing that the key to healthy aging was staying socially active and constantly surrounded by others. He pushed himself to maintain contact with old friends, even though many of those friendships had faded over the years and felt like nothing more than hollow rituals. His days were filled with social obligations that had long since stopped feeding his soul. But one day, as he was sitting alone reflecting, he had an epiphany. He wasn't enjoying it. The conversations had become predictable, the gatherings felt like empty routines, and despite being surrounded by people, he felt more alone than ever before. He realized that this was not how he wanted to spend the rest of his life. So, in a moment of clarity, James made a powerful decision. He stopped forcing himself to maintain friendships that no longer held meaning for him. He made room for new opportunities, new experiences, and most importantly, he permitted himself to rest. He started spending more time in nature, focusing on his health, exploring passions that had long been dormant, and allowing himself to simply be. And in doing so, he found something extraordinary. He became lighter, freer, and most importantly, happier. There's an indescribable peace that comes with the decision to let go of things, of people, of expectations that no longer serve you. Letting go doesn't just mean walking away from people. It means giving yourself the space to grow, to breathe, to reclaim your time and energy. It's not always easy, but it is necessary. It's about making the conscious decision to honor your emotional well-being over the comfort of the past. And when you do this, when you make this brave choice, life begins to unfold in ways you never thought possible. You will find that the relationships that remain are richer and more authentic. You'll find new hobbies that light your soul on fire, and most importantly, you'll find a peace that you never thought you could experience at this stage of life. It's truly incredible. So I encourage you, release, let go, and watch how much more fulfilling your life becomes when you give yourself the freedom to simply be, without the weight of old obligations, outdated expectations, and shallow relationships. Trust me, the life that awaits you on the other side of letting go is nothing short of magnificent. As we come to the end of today's video, I hope you found something meaningful in our discussion about the power of letting go and the freedom that comes with embracing the next chapter of life. What have you learned so far about releasing old expectations and making space for a more fulfilling life? Is there one specific lesson that stood out to you the most? I'd love for you to share one thing you've learned today and plan to put into practice in your own life. Please leave your comment below this video and let us know. And remember, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we want to continue bringing you content that helps you live a more fulfilled, peaceful, and happy life. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.